Board of Education of the Kaneland Community Unit School District 302 on August 27th at 7:01 p.m. We would like to inform all board member attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. We'll start with the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Mrs. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
I'm here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas and Mrs. Witt are absent.
Correct. So we have a quorum with 4 members present. Would anyone like to move something from the consent agenda to new business?
No, thanks.
No.
No.
All right. See none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Does someone have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Sure.
Roll call.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. So we will move on to the board salutes. Superintendent salutes.
Yes.
Fran, Mrs. Eggleston, our Director of Special Education, could you join me? We do have a special recognition tonight for our Lions Club, and I'll let Mrs. Eggleston kind of share a little bit of the background and the history, and then we'll have Joe come up and join us with, I believe, his wife Mary tonight.
No.
No?
They're just good, very good friends.
Sorry, friends.
Wife Sharon of 52 years has had issues with
Colin, can you delete that, please? Just wipe that completely out. Sorry.
Sure. I'd like to introduce 2 wonderful people that I've had the opportunity to work closely with. They are representing the Elburn Lions, Joe Krizak and Mary Gustafson. So if the 2 of you wouldn't mind coming up here. While I just share a little bit about the history of the Kaneland special needs, having the ability to work with our special needs population. Probably, is this our 3rd year? Yep. 3rd year. So 3 years ago, Joe contacted me and asked if I would be willing to partner with him in regards to identifying students that would benefit from a modified Elburn, what do I call it? The wristband session, the carnival. Yes, thank you. And so I worked closely with Joe. He indicated what he was looking for, and I was able to slowly start identifying the students that would benefit from something like this. And over the course of 3 years, we've been able to increase the number of students that would benefit and enjoy the opportunity to participate in a carnival atmosphere where the lights are turned off, the music is turned down, it's not as crowded, and our families, some of our families have never been able to enjoy an outing like that due to the needs of their students. So I want to thank Joe Krizak and Mary Gustafson on behalf of the Elburn Lions for giving our students that opportunity, and this is 3 years in the making. So thank you very much to the 2 of you. It's been wonderful.
Thanks. The way this all started, it was a year before the 3 years. There was anything happens that needs something, they come to me. And they said, we got a problem. And one of our workers, and I met a young woman and a mother, and she says, I don't know what to do. She says, my son here, while he's waiting on rides, he starts to cry and stuff like that because he can't stand the flashing lights. I never heard of such a thing, so I don't know. So I take the mother and the child, and we go see the owners of the carnival. And the daughter-in-law, and it's a family outfit, the daughter-in-law takes the mother to various rides and tells the operator that when you see this child come, let the child on first so he doesn't have to wait. Da, 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 da. So I got to thinking there must be a lot of people like this. And so I had a meeting with the fire chief, because in the carnival, and I've been handling rides forever, in the carnival, the person that says jump, and I ask how high is the fire people. You got fire lanes, you got safety, you got this and that, whatever. And then I had the people from the carnival and another person from the Lions, and we sat down, and I says, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to invite people, and I want the carnival to do it for free, have the rides, and we'll put on wristbands, and we will have not only the child come, but brothers and sisters, parents, grandma and grandpa, because I'd like to come. And if my child was like that, so that's what we started to do. And we have Fran that she does, the inviting. I don't know who they are. Don't want to know. I don't even know if it's legal, but I don't need to know. I don't.
It's legal.
Well, anyways, I don't need to know the names. And she started doing this, and we started to expand stuff like that. And I've talked to not only educators, but I've talked to mothers. And we have yellow shirts. And the reason why I got yellow shirts is I sat down. I found a mother that wouldn't be afraid of my stupid questions, get mad at me. And we sat down, we had lunch at the corner grind. And her child, at that time, was 11 and was autistic. And she says, well, kids are very, they're orientated. You give them something, they look them, if there's a time thing, and that's why we got wristbands. She says they do this, and they're very smart. They like stuff that spin. And she says they take everything extremely literally. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, I'll give you an example. My son and my dad came over and they were playing on a computer. And Grandpa screwed something up and then he left. So my son is sitting there singing the blues. So I sat down by him and I says, listen, put yourself in Grandpa's shoes. And the kid starts looking for Grandpa's shoes. And that's when I decided I had to have people that I called yellow shirts. They all wear yellow shirts that are experienced with these kids to help them at the carnival. So that's how we started. But I have Mary here tonight, just something different. I started Elburn Lions for Literacy. It'll be 6 years in December. And my point person from the school here is Dr. Sarah. And we're trending on 16,000 books. That most of them are new, but some are used, and our challenges and my marching orders are they're kids, they're needy, and they're from the Kaneland area. Not necessarily all Kaneland students, stuff like, but from the Kaneland area. And one of the people that helps is Mary Gustafson, and she came to me last year, and she said, you know what? She says, you see these little libraries, these little book banks that people have in your yard, stuff like that. I think we ought to have one by our playground. And when the kids come in and the mothers sit down and watching the kids, they can grab a book. And the kids can grab a book, take it home, and maybe replace it, stuff like that. So that's what we did. And it's working very well. Now we're putting 3 more in. And I went to the village people, village of Elburn. And they're putting one on the north side. Keenville is putting one near the community center. Sugar Grove is putting theirs right here in the heart of property. And the person that's going to man that and make sure it's replenished and stuff like that is Dr. Mum. So that's another phase that we're doing. So we're real happy with that. And that started with Mary Gustafson. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did the kids get rained on this year?
Not this year.
Did the kids get rained on?
It was right afterwards.
It was right afterwards? They were lucky then, right?
Yes, we were, the parade started and it was about 20 minutes and then the parade madly.
Yes.
That's a big problem. That makes Grandpa real nervous. Because if it rains, I have nowhere to go. No, really, you can't make it on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because everything's full. Can't make it on Sunday. I mean, I don't know what to do, and that's a challenge that we have to think about.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that everybody was still dry, because we were in the parade and we got soaked.
The yellow wristbands. The first year, for some reason, I had to go to the ticket booth while the thing is going on. And I saw a guy sitting on a picnic table right behind the ticket booth. And that picnic tables are there so we put on wristbands during the
Right.
regular. And he had a wristband on, so I know he was a parent, or, you know, he was related to a child. So I said, how things going? He's fine. He says, you see that bumblebee? Yeah. He says, see that boy getting off? That's my son. Since he's gotten here, he's gotten on that bumblebee, rode it, got off of it, got on it, got off of it. He says, and that's the first time he could ever go to a carnival.
Yeah,
So that makes, you know, it makes the thing all worthwhile.
right.
That's it.
I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you.
And we get a lot of help from Dr. Mom and Fran and everybody else, so. And we need it. They tell me I'm a good organizer, and the key is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you are.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
And I believe Dr. Coops wanted to recognize a few groups.
I do. I know that Dr. Layden will be giving a report on the opening of school in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, I wanted to let everybody know our Director of Transportation, it's her first year this year, and for the first days of school, kudos to her and her staff for the hard work they did in preparing over the summer. A significant majority of the routes were on time. Very few routes are overcrowded. I think right now we're only dealing with maybe one or two minor issues. And all kids were at school and home that afternoon in a reasonable amount of time for the first day of school. So kudos to Mrs. Smith for her work with transportation. Similarly, food service, Nick Borg, he developed our new food service program where parents can put money online to fund their accounts. We had it before, but he upgraded what we had, and now parents can see what the kids have ordered and or purchased throughout the days. They love it. Again, we had a few things, minor tweaks the first couple days. We're still working through a few things, but for the majority of the system, everything is up and running and all students were fed in a fairly timely manner. So kudos to Nick and to Karen for their work to get ready for the start of the school year. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone have anything else? No? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Our rules for public comment are the board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use this public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is now open to public comment. Did I read all that for nothing?
Yes, you did.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
But you read it well.
Yes.
There you go. Tonight, the consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll, August 2018, approval of minutes of the August 13th, 2018 regular meeting, approval of resignation and employment of staff, approval of addendum to educational support staff, bus driver, and food service employee handbook, second reading, and the following informational items: the field trip notification, new teacher hire report, summer school update 2018, the 2018-19 budget update. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, and a roll call.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
And Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. So we will now move on to new business. J1, report on the opening of the 2018-19 school year.
Yes, we have a few highlights that I'm going to share. Some of them will be either Dr. Fuchs has already mentioned or will be repeated in J2 when we talk about Kaneland 2020 in that presentation. But first we'd like to share that, as you know, last Monday we had our staff come back to school. So we had over 600 staff members on the first day, and we set up 2 days of interactive activities focusing on personalized learning and our strategic plan, and also opportunities for staff to meet and work with grade levels and in the buildings. So we do that for the first couple days. Then on Wednesday we had our first day for students, and as Dr. Fuchs talked about, it was mostly uneventful for over 4,000 students riding buses. That's always a great start to our school year. Then, as you know, a couple of nights we've already had some curriculum nights, open houses, supply drop-offs. A couple of those have already taken place, and we have a few of those other ones that are still going to take place later this week and next week. In the area of curriculum, we have about 30 teachers who are falling under the term of igniters. And igniters are some of our staff members that are on the leading edge, leading curve of personalized learning and proficiency-based progress as we roll that out this year. So that's going to be one of our focus this year, in addition to continuing with our learner profile. And so you'll see and hear more about our igniters. As you know, last year we had a lot of dialogue regarding trimesters, went through CAC, FAC, and our board talked about what that would look like for EC through 5. So that's our first year of that. We already had our first CAC meeting, and they looked for and asked for highlights. So we'll continue to give feedback on trimesters, how that's going. Something new at our elementary schools this year, because of the fact that curriculum drop-off can be such intense time. There's so many people wandering around the buildings and dropping off their supplies. Our elementary schools put on tours for new students and their families. So those that wanted to set up a time in advance came up on their own, came in early, and had a chance to check out the building, find out where the cafeteria, see where the bus stops are, or the bus, when you pick up their bus route after school, see where their classroom is, in a little less pressure-packed environment than supply drop-off. You'll hear more about this also, but we have our One School, One Book program. We're excited about that. We do have a couple staff members that will be coming on September 10th, our next board meeting, to receive salutes for that work, and a lot more foundation and a lot more information will follow with that. Our Kaneland Foundation, if you recall, we shifted the grant cycle so that those grants were already approved at our last foundation meeting, and we had over $30,000 in grant requests, and we were able to, the foundation was able to grant just over $10,000 for our staff. And so then as the foundation continues to try to do additional fundraising, hopefully we can bring in more funds and have more grants each year, because it does all go back to our students, which is great. Our golf outing is September 20th. It is the primary foundation fundraiser, so we are accepting donations from the community. We've already checked with our staff if anybody has anything, time, talents, or prizes they would like to donate. We do have a silent auction that takes part at the golf outing on the 20th at Bliss Creek. You'll hear a little bit more about this, but from an HR standpoint, the candidate profile, which is one of the primary drivers in the strategic plan under HR, is done and will start to be used this spring in our primary hiring season. As you know, the spring is really the hiring season for education, so we'll use more of that. And also, as you heard with the SPEAK contract, there is a new staff evaluation plan that we're using with our SPEAK members, and we'll also be using that with our non-SPEAK staff too. So that will be expanded to include more staff members. Facilities, you know, our new gym is, that East Gym is being renovated. A new scoreboard has been donated. That will be going up, along with a new floor and bleachers. That is progressing along. We look forward to that being available probably towards the end of our volleyball season. For facilities here, we do have new equipment in the fitness center, and also part of the track has been resurfaced at Harder. From Fox Valley Career Center, I talked with Rick, Dr. Burchell, and we are continuing to work with communities, local areas, Waubonsie and also Kishwaukee. Kishwaukee did donate some small engines, and we'll also be able to have an opportunity to earn dual credit through Kishwaukee. And also a local heating and cooling company donated an air conditioner and a heater so that the kids can be able to work on that in their second year of the electrical class. So those students, while there's not a certification that goes along with it right now, they'll at least get the experience of getting their hands on with a heating, a furnace and also an air conditioner. Also, with security, we talked about this a little bit in the spring, but our buildings now do have a dual entry at each of our schools. So rather than just being able to come directly into the building, there's a first line of entry that is outside of the building, so they'll have to buzz first there, and then from there, there's a video that our administrative assistants can see who it is. Then they enter inside the hallways. Then from there, they still have to buzz to get in the office. So as we, as our new safety and security task force met, that was one of the areas of greatest bang for our dollar and safety for our students. So Mark and his team and Dr. Fuchs did a great job of getting that in, along with our IT department, because the technology piece to make sure that that works well. So that's done. As you learned last year, Alice is our safety protocol. We're going to continue that and expand that this year. And one of the things we had talked about was, because it's new and because it's different, as we expand that, we will have communication with the community. We'll send out any information prior to. We'll invite parents as warranted and make sure that they understand what's taking place at the age-appropriate levels. Homecoming parade, we talked a little bit about that, but we are in year 4 of the homecoming parade, so we've made our full rotation through Elburn, Caneville, Maple Park, and then this year it's going to be in Sugar Grove. And homecoming week is September 18th through the 22nd, I believe, with the parade taking place on Wednesday, then coming back to the high school for Powder Puff. First day of school at the high school, Tim Ryan was a guest speaker. I think I forwarded this to you in the weekly update. He was a guest speaker who came in. I'll just read quickly. Despite his successful career, heroin stole half of Tim's life and eventually took his own son. But he's dedicated every waking minute since walking out of prison to dealing hope to addicts, their families, and communities they touch. So this was impactful, and Mrs. Maris has done a great job securing him. So he will be coming back September 13th for a parent meeting. So we'll have, that information will be going out. That will be at the high school. So it'll be in the auditorium. And so we'll have the opportunity for our community to see and hear. We've received rave feedback from students and parents already from the high school that have had the opportunity to see and hear his story. Moving along, thank you for your patience. From IT, I talked with Tim. As Julianne said, the new food service program is in, and we have heard from a few parents already that they appreciate being able to see what their sons and daughters are eating on a regular basis and trying to maybe redirect some of their eating habits as warranted. So then we also have 10 new Wi-Fi access points at Meredith, as we're using Meredith regularly for Fox Valley Career Center and for staff development, PD. That's helped make it more Wi-Fi accessible. And then this is one Tim will be able to share with you, but we replaced all of the old back-end network hardware at Harder here. I imagine that's a good thing. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but when Tim comes and gives a tech update to CAC and also to our board, he can elaborate more on that. A couple last things through special services and Fran Eggleston. We have a board-certified behavior analyst this year. It's the first year we've had this position. It's a 10-hour-a-week position, and what this individual will be able to do is be able to help our teachers creatively figure out how to work with lower-functioning students with special needs. As we recall back through as educators, our teacher ed programs, a lot of what we learn is math instruction. How do we work with 22 students? How do we work with 24 students? But as we're identifying more students with IEPs, it's more and more evident that we have additional supports in place, and this behavior analyst will be able to help with that. And not only that, but it's just an unbelievably cool title. Then we have professional development for paraprofessionals. Based on a survey from last spring, some of the topics that they'll be focusing on this year: behavior management strategies, disability awareness and instructional strategies, along with facilitating positive social interaction skills, and motivating students. The other thing you'll see with our students with IEPs, the facilitated IEP process. If you recall, last year we started, or 2 years ago, I believe, student-led conferences here at the middle school, and that's expanding out a little bit. So one of the things that we're trying to do at IEP meetings, trying to have students advocate for themselves a little bit more, understand a little bit more of what their IEP is and how they learn and the strategies in place that can help them. So as we're trying to personalize, expand personalized learning across the district, that will be for all of our students, including those with IEPs. Happy birthday to Shields and Stewart. This is their 20th anniversary. So you will see T-shirts. I saw them from both Shields and Stewart being ordered, and you can order those, and our staff will be wearing those throughout the year. So the 20th anniversary. And then lastly, they don't look 20 though. They're in great shape. Okay, Dr. Fuchs, they're in great shape. Well, last thing we have, or I have before we move on to J2 is 211 is a new community service program in Kane County. Kind of got started through the superintendent program as Lisa Hitchens, Dr. Hitchens from Batavia, learned about it and shared more with us. So all of Kane County, it's not up and running yet, but all of Kane County will have access to 211, just the numbers 211 like that you would dial. And what it will be able to serve is all of our county in the areas of crisis, food, health, reentry for our veterans, job, employment, housing, mental health awareness, and other special needs that county members may have. And at this point right now, it's a relationship with the school districts and the local municipalities. But our goal as a school district is to help fund it for 2 or 3 years, and then at some point the municipalities will take it over and own more of that. And it's just be a wonderful service that we have, or an additional service to what our school and our county already offers. But you'll see and hear more about this. And as it's up and running, we'll send it out to our community members, and we'll make it well known for our staff and our students. So it's just one more source that they can possibly get assistance as needed. So these are a number of the things that we're doing to start the school year. There's more. You'll hear more in the Kaneland 2020 update in just a few minutes, but those are some of our highlights. And Dr. Fuchs, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, thank you. You covered it very well.
Or any of our cabinet members, we're all here ready for Kaneland 2020. I don't want you to give away too much of your information before we get to that, but anything else?
How's the thing with this entering the school and having them to go through the outside and then to get into the inside?
Yeah.
Has that been working real well?
Yeah, it's going well right now, and I think any inconvenience that parents are experiencing on the other side, they appreciate the safety way more, so they understand it. And we've worked out any of the bugs that have occurred or that we currently had as far as size of screen so that people can see it and identify them. So it's up and functioning and working well.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming like once we get into volleyball games and things like that, will that be shut down, or will anybody coming in for those things have to go through that process too?
Good question. Dr. Fuchs, from an operations standpoint, like when would it stop running throughout the course of the day?
In the evening for events like that, we would turn it off because you've got ticket takers that are right there, and they'll take tickets just like before.
Okay.
So they'll unlock the doors for those kinds of events.
Okay.
Yeah. It's primarily during the school day.
School day type thing, okay.
Yeah, and then if there's nothing going on, it would stay locked, but generally, we would turn it off for events.
There's always something going on.
At the high school.
Yeah.
Not at our other schools.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Good. And there's no action?
Oops, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We put signs up this past Friday to help people,
Okay.
and then we publicized it a little bit better on social media too at the end of last week. So.
You sent
Yeah,
an
I saw
email out
those.
too, correct?
Yep.
With some of the steps?
Yep.
Right.
And then we're going to get some permanent signs. We just need to figure out what we want to put on them.
Okay.
Thank you. And then also with 211, the county is providing signs, so we will have signs up in our buildings when that's up and activated.
Okay.
There's no action needed on that. That was
Okay.
just information, so thank you.
So J2, don't let you stop.
Yeah, I'll move over there.
There we
We're
go.
gonna rotate through. So we do have our Kaneland 2020 bulletin brochure for our. Sorry, I've been told we can't hear if we're not in front of the mic. So we do have more brochures here. So if you'd like one of these, there's 4 or 5 over here if you want to grab one, because it's going to be a presentation where we're going to spend about the next 45 or 50 minutes to walk through our Kaneland 2020, our strategic plan. And just as a reminder, we have just concluded year 2 of our strategic plan, and so we're going into year 3. If you'll recall, this time last year we did a presentation on the brochure, which was our 2017 brochure. So now we will have our second. All of this information is online, and you can find it there. Jen Hodak, well, first Nikki Larson from Fox Valley Career Center does a nice job printing them for us, and then Jen Hodak, our webmaster, puts it up on our website and updates all of the terms and all of the information in here. So before we actually get into the information, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what the brochure is. If you'll notice, there's just an inside welcome letter. There are a number of staff members, administrators, and community members who play very important roles. So thank you to all of them. Thank you to all of you that played an important role. And then there's the table of contents. And then as we move past the table of contents, each of the 2 pages, there are 3 of our priorities. We have the 3 priorities and the 9 outcomes. So of the 9 outcomes, they're outlined on both pages. So you see on the left side was all of the accomplishments and the work that was done, actions implemented during the 17-18 school year. And then on the right side, this is for the upcoming school year, the 18-19 school year, and that's called the Idea Action Bank. So at this point right now, these are our ideas, our action bank for the year. But as you know, if you look from the previous year, this final concluding box is different than when we started. So it's truly, as when the planning committee met, one of the things we wanted to talk about was Kaneland 2020 being a dynamic plan that's always changing, and as needs change, as technology changes, and education changes, we update and work with that. So if you look through those would be our 9 that we're going to go over in just a couple minutes. But I would ask you to move towards the end to page 21, the end of the brochure. I'll just quickly highlight the last couple pages, and then Dr. Mumm and Mr. Rice will come up and start our first priority. So if you look on page 21, again, that's our mission. We defined college, career, and community ready. Adjusted the core values as part of Kaneland 2020. We made them more action-oriented. Rather than respect is something, we changed everything into we are, or we're going to, and this is what we are, so more action. And then personalized learning, as that's driving a lot of our strategic plan. That was one of the other ones that we felt needed to be defined on that page. Key links that you'll find on the next page 22. If you go to that website, Jen Hodak, as we finalize the plan from year to year, we send all of the key terms, all of the key diagrams, and you can find all of those there. Again, updated, and you'll be able to find year to year. So one of the things that we're excited about is we found this to be our documentation source, that each of the 4 years will document all 4, and then we'll have one culminating document at the end that will culminate all 4 of the years of Kaneland 2020. And then from there, we'll start to review what 20-something else might look like as the updated strategic plan. And I know the Gallery Walk and Taste of Kaneland will both be touched on as we have various cabinet members come up and share. So what'll happen now over the next couple minutes, that's probably a lie, probably the next lot of minutes. We're going to go through each of the priorities or each of the outcomes, highlight a little bit of some of the things that we have accomplished and some of the things we plan to do. And as you have questions, please feel free to ask those questions, and we'll make this a little bit interactive as warranted. So Dr. Mumm and Mr. Rice, I'll let you come up and share first.
As Dr. Layden said, we're kind of broken into those 3 different priorities of personalized learning, culture, and human resources. Dr. Mumm and I will talk mainly about personalized learning with a little bit of touching on culture, since those 2 are kind of related. So if you would open up your books to page 3, I'm going to talk a little bit here about outcome 1A and what that means for us. Outcome 1A in a nutshell is really about getting to know our students and then using that information to drive how we teach. Some of the things on page 3 that talk about what we did last year. You remember us probably talking a lot about the Institute for Personalized Learning last year and the partnership that we developed with them. That's really been a fruitful partnership for us. We've learned a lot from them. They've given us a lot of guidance in how to roll out an initiative like this. And one of the most useful tools of that whole partnership has been that honeycomb framework. The link that Dr. Layden showed you guys, if you click that, if you don't remember exactly what the honeycomb model looks like, you can see it at that web link. But it's basically, it looks like a bee's honeycomb. There's a lot of different cells on there. And the idea is you select those cells, you start to implement them as an institution, and over time you become more personalized. And with those cells, the ones at the middle are the most important. There's 3 at the middle. They're the learner profile, proficiency-based progress, and then customized pathways. We decided that our best bet would be to look at each one of those individually over the course of 3 years, really get to know those well as a district, start to implement things around those, and then really build that foundation for our staff. So last year, you heard us talk about it a lot, our focus was the learner profile. For the first time ever, I'm told, Kaneland had an all-in district goal that every single building throughout the district shared, and that was to get our students to know what the learner profile was, and not only know it, but also start to begin using it and knowing what would they do based on what they know about themselves. And as you heard us share last year, we were happy that not only did our students learn what the learner profile was, but we met our goal of having about 50-some%, I think it was a total at 58% by the time we were done, actually using it and thinking about how that impacted them as learners and what they could do with that. We really, like I think I said it again, but in a nutshell, last year was really about building that foundation, about this philosophy, so that we could take this year and really start to look a little bit more at what do we do now that we have all these ideas and that we know about what we want to do with our students. So that's where proficiency-based progress comes in. This year, the idea is much more about teaching what that means, that idea of learning skills and mastering them, as opposed to, I think, probably what all of us are a little bit more used to, and that was 4 weeks, we're going to read To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're going to write an essay about what that means, turn in your paper, and then when that's done, we're going to read Julius Caesar, and we're going to look at how Shakespeare writes and what his language means. It doesn't matter if you got what we had 4 weeks ago. I think that's how I taught, and that's how I learned, and we want to try to shift the focus to be a little bit more about learning and a little bit less focus on just that teaching act. And that's a nuance that I think is difficult for a lot of people to understand. Our staff's picking it up well, and now they're just asking for those tools. What do we need? How do I actually do this? This year, you'll hear us talk about learning targets a lot, how we take those big standards that the state has given us or that's out there with the national standards and break those down into chunks that we can say our students would understand and use I can language. So a student can actually look and say, by the time I'm done doing X, Y, or Z, I can do this skill. And once I'm able to do a lot of these skills, I can do this big standard that the state or the national organization, whatever it may be, is telling me I need to be able to do. We're looking at not only breaking those down, but then also making sure all of our assessments and all of our learning activities are all aligned to those and help drive those forward. As a teacher myself, all of us have those projects that we know our kids like or that we really like or that are just good projects to do, but sometimes they don't fit with what our end goal is necessarily. And so coming back and really evaluating those and making sure everything we do is intentional and the students are aware of where they're progressing. Those are really the big parts about 1A that we're kind of focusing on this year. So before I move on to the next page, if you guys have any questions about at least that one, I'll give you a chance to ask them. Okay. So if you flip the page and you look at 1B, this is really about environment. So it's one thing to change how we think about education. It's one way to think about how we go about it. It's another thing to really, what does that look like in a classroom? And it's really easy to think about just the physical environment, and that's definitely changing. Last year we talked a lot about different classroom setups or giving students access to different furniture, and through foundation grants and through just resourceful teachers, we saw a lot of the physical environment start to change. But we also want to make sure that we embed a lot of this work into those documents that guide what we do. So I won't steal all of Dr. Mum's thunder, but a lot of this goal talks a lot about how we take the 21st century learning skills, the ideas that we think about personalized learning and how we're really trying to reach kids. How do we write that into those written curriculum documents that guide what staff do? So this isn't just one of those initiatives that, well, if you were here back in 2016 or 2017, this is how we do things, but it's 2020 and we hired you this year, you weren't here, so just do whatever you want. We really want to turn this into something that we believe in and it really guides our work. So you would see last year through all of our curriculum initiatives, through all of our revision cycles, you've heard us talk about it when we present on the next gen science standards or when we brought our social studies review, for example, how we're embedding all of those skills into those curricula. This year, it's going to move beyond just those I guess, written curricula pieces and really start to talk about what the functions of things that are happening in our classroom. So we've got a lot of pilot groups happening this year. Not only we have different curriculum and things that are written down, but we're piloting different technology tools. How those tools help us personalize for students. We're piloting different reporting structures, grading structures. How do those tools let us give more accurate information back to our students? We're piloting different everything, really. We've got that Igniter group that Todd talked about with their maybe how they deliver lessons or how they give students choice and how they consume knowledge or how they show that they've learned. So we're really trying a lot of these different practices within the classroom, and all of that's with the goal of, if we've got these small pockets of teachers that are trying these new things, what can we learn from them, what worked, what didn't work, and then how do we scale that up as a district over the following years? So this doesn't become one of those initiatives that just lives in pockets. How do we learn from those igniters, those people that are really setting the trend, and bring that back so that we can learn from it? So that's really our focus there on the environments this year. Questions?
Yes, please.
Yes.
The Igniter group, how are you evaluating their success, failure to implement it
Each one of
district-wide?
each one of them has a plan that they've written as far as I want to meet this specific goal, or I want to try this strategy to see if it helps my students, whether it's comprehension, or if I set up a different seating arrangement in my classroom, do I have a different level of engagement? So each one, we have about 30 of them. Each one of them has their own specific goal. We meet with them throughout the year. They're all collecting different types of data to see did it work or did it not. And then we meet monthly with that entire group to share what everybody's been doing. So it's more, I guess, anecdotal data than really hard and fast data right now. There are a few people that are working on true student achievement data. So if I do this in my classroom, is it going to change a PARCC score? Is it going to change what my unit assessment might look like? But a lot of it more right now is tied to kind of social emotional outcomes at the moment. So knowing that we only have a pocket of people doing this, we didn't want to shake the boat up too much and do too much that was going to...
I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this, looking at it further down the road. If you have one third grade classroom that tries this and it works great in that classroom,
Right.
Are you going to be back here saying, well, let's do it district-wide, or what? How are we going from the micro to the macro?
I think that would be a conversation we would have. So if it works in just that one third grade classroom, I think then we'd bring in more third grade teachers and talk about, here's our kind of lab group. This is how they did it and what they did. Would this work for you? Would it not? Is there a way we can incorporate a piece of it to scale it up a little bit without going full scale and make sure that it actually works? Or was it just an anomaly with that group of students? So each plan is going to be a little bit different because everybody's goals are a little bit different. But we didn't want to just change things overnight. So it's kind of a very measured response. Get the data, try it out a little bit more with a little bit bigger group and a little bit bigger group, and then see if it really does work. That's when we would have that conversation about truly scaling it up.
So that would be over the course of years?
A couple of years, yep.
Okay. All right.
Some things may, if it's changing up a seating arrangement that's not going to be a huge impact to the learner, that could be something we could do overnight. But anything that's going to really change the curriculum, we want to make sure. One of the things with personalized learning is it's new enough that there's not a ton of longitudinal research out there. So we kind of have to build it as we go. So we want to make sure we don't upset the apple cart, I guess, and make sure that we're very thoughtful about any changes like that we're making.
Okay, thank you. I had another question, but
Sure.
I lost my place. Have we talked about curriculum maps yet or not?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. It's the goal is to all revised curriculum maps will be fully implemented, blah, blah, blah. I don't recall us ever talking about like language arts, like Spanish.
Language arts right now, and so you're going to hear it this year.
So you're going to do a review on those already?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
We're in there. They're going to be starting, I think it's next Thursday, maybe 2 Thursdays from now is our kickoff meeting. We actually had a lot of work, some groups working over the summer. So language arts is next up, world languages along with them, and then math will be kind of the next one we do. But math was kind of the first one in this current cycle that we're in, so we're kind of starting over with them.
Well, I guess, because it's I don't know what the exact length of time is, but you go through each group and rotate. So
Yep.
we're implementing or making sure that maps that were 3 and 4 years ago are fully implemented. Shouldn't they already be implemented?
Well, those are. So it's just as we knock them off the list. So last
okay.
year we brought you social studies. Those will be fully implemented this year. This year
Okay.
we'll bring you English language arts. Those will be fully implemented last year. So it's really just those new ones. The older ones you've seen, they're fully implemented.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Ask away. It's fine. Any other questions on those?
So just kind of like a basic framework discussion.
Sure.
How are you ensuring that correlation isn't getting swapped for causation, right? Like how do you know it's like, well, I changed the seating chart and this class is working. How do you know it's actually the causation for why it's working?
That's the hard part when it's not hard and fast data. So I think that's when you start to scale it and then do it in other classrooms with other students and see, does it still work?
Right.
So, because it could just be that teacher and the relationships that teacher has built. So much of it comes back to that. So it's this Igniter group's really just there. If there's some bubbles of things that start working, we know to pick up on those and then really put those through more intensive paces to see if it really does pan out. Those would be the things we might bring to you as more traditional, like pilots that you've seen in the past. If some of those things start to pop up and we want to try this a little bit more broader, we would bring those to you guys here to give you more formal updates on those.
Okay.
And they would have much more measurable goals attached to them and things like that.
I think even linked in that Igniter group, there's that sense that when we come together with all 30 monthly, they really are, if they're hearing that this is working over here in this context, we're hoping, and there's been some discussion of, well, then I'm going to try a piece of that as well and try to replicate it at my different grade level or in my different context and see if I get similar results or discrepant results from what you had, so that they're even willing to kind of be the test pilots of their own pilots among the 30 of them.
I would expect that you're going to run into some things that you can't actually measure, but are functioning and are working and are increasing things, but you just can't put a number to it necessarily, right? So you're going to have to weigh that out, right? Like, this is great. We don't have numbers why, but we know it's great.
Right.
You know.
And I think we know this is still kind of a work in progress for us, but we know we had these staff members that were out there really trying some new things.
Right.
And one of the things that we lacked as a district, I think, was a structure for them to get together and share the work they were doing and a way for us to learn from it. So I think we're kind of building this as we go, and as we start to learn from that, we'll see, oh, this is a way to build this idea out and measure it and really, does it work or not?
The nice part about it too, which we talked about when we really came up with the Igniter Fellowship idea, is we had staff coming to us to say, I really would like to see this in action. And we say, well, pack your bags, we're going to send you to Wisconsin. Now we really have an opportunity to say, great, would you like to go over to Harder or over to this elementary school? We know it's not the same grade level, but you can kind of see the practice happening and not have to travel out of state currently for that. So we're excited. They've all agreed as Igniters that your classroom is open. It's open to anyone that wants to come. Pick your brain. We'll have an opportunity where you can sit with that other staff member, and so we're hoping that we'll be able to somewhat replicate the concept and ideas just by having them as kind of lab classrooms for other staff.
Well, and then you're growing your own experts, which is a much better plan than always shopping outside.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Good.
Turn it over to you for 1, 2.
We're going to skip over to the culture priority, because there's a culture priority on page 9, 2A, that really complements the work that Mr. Rice was talking about. And then we'll go back and someone will finish up the 1 section. 2A was really a focus of the strategic plan. If you remember, if you were on that committee work or talking here at the board level, we've always had core values within our strategic plan the last couple versions, but we really didn't take opportunities to bring them alive, to make them actual models, explicit teaching, and really be able to show both for the staff and students, this is what it means for commitment to excellence or integrity or any one of the core values. So this goal really focused on, could we bring it alive for staff, really help them understand it, as well as link to the curriculum maps during the review cycle. Here's where we're going to explicitly teach each one of those core values within every content area, so that we know we can guarantee not only are these the philosophy of Kaneland, but they are actual practices and students have been embedded with activities and discussion around them. This year's work in 17-18, we wanted to balance both opportunities for students as well as staff. We had the staff do a video challenge of show us your Kaneland pride, submit videos of anything we do in Kaneland that really exemplifies any one of the core values. And we had videos submitted that not only showed the core value, but they could do it in drama or action or comedy. And so we had a lot of karaoke in the car happening and some really good cheerleading. videos that came in, and that really let us know that the staff understands what this means visually. What does it mean to be a Knight and have those core values? Once the staff has that understanding by other means, by having a Kaneland Pride hashtag, and a lot of other discussion that they had during the curriculum review cycle when they were attaching it to certain units of study, we also wanted to make sure that there were opportunities that students were recognized on the basis of those core values. And so we met with all the grade spans and did kind of an audit of how do we recognize students currently. And it might go from something from a Knight's ticket at the elementary school to the court postcards that are sent here at the middle school, to formal recognition nights at the high school, or the Latin honor system that I know Mike worked diligently with the board on for graduation. And we wanted to make sure that those recognition systems were substantial and sustainable, as well as really linked to those core values. And so through that audit, we identified those are the systems we want to have in place for recognition, and didn't find any gaps in which we had to create a new system for. And so we were excited about just maintaining the programs that we already had in place at each of the grade spans. If you flip to this year's action ideas, like we were just discussing with Mr. Carey, English Language Arts is up, and so it's our final curriculum to be reviewed under this new process where they link to the 21st century skills as well as the core values. So any curriculum map that you see online and after this year, including English Language Arts, should have a box that explicitly states this is the core value we're discussing during this unit of study. And this is the 21st century skill that comes right off of the student profile, the graduate profile, and you can see those explicit links. We went back during each one of the cycles and talked about you can't just put the word there within the unit, then you have to have the activities embedded. And so they've done that all except for English Language Arts will be complete, which will be complete at the end of this year. We want to maintain our recognition systems like I had talked about. We talked with Harder about making sure that those court cards are really linked with the core value language, just as a little tweak to the system that they currently have. And then making sure through learning walks and visits into the classrooms that we see the core values come alive within lessons. And so as Mike and I go out and visit and the other administrators, we have those core values. We know the curriculum maps, and we'll be able to say, yes, I see that language embedded. I'm hearing it in the students' dialogue. Or we can ask those questions to staff as we do learning walks. Tell me more about how integrity was a piece of this, because it's on the curriculum map. How is it coming alive if we didn't get to see it during that learning walk visit? So that's kind of the focus of that one that complements a lot of the work that Mike described.
Okay.
Question?
Are you finding that the core values are consistently interpreted? Like, do you have to norm them necessarily, or are people just kind of like lining up right?
I think ever since this draft of Kaneland 2020 versus some older strategic plans where we've truly defined each one of them, I feel the consistency is definitely there. We've had some discussion, especially even at the curriculum review cycle meetings, so tell me a little bit more about how you're seeing integrity with this unit of study or with this text or this novel study. And through those discussions, I think that's really where we're kind of getting our inter-rater reliability on how we define them.
Okay. Good, because I would imagine that could be difficult, right?
For sure.
People can interpret things differently.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, it's good.
I think we're going to find it too as it's implemented, those same conversations need to be had among students and staff.
Sure.
I might, as the teacher, have a very clear definition, but then as they're having a peer discussion, I need to facilitate that they have a common understanding, which is really that next step of full implementation.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
The next two that I'm going to share now are 1C and 2B. So I'm going to start with 1C, which is on page 7. Trying to keep it as chronological and sequencing connected as we can as we go through with various cabinet members who led each of the areas. So on this one, as we talked about up in the outcome, a rigorous process that supports an evolving interdisciplinary context through the schools, communities, workplaces, and global enterprises. One of the goals of last year that we accomplished that we thought was really important was a survey to students. Because as educators and staff members and teachers, administrators, we seem to believe that we know what's best for kids and we are going to put this treatment on you and make you a better student. So that we've tried that, and then as we got feedback from students, we did do a survey with all middle school and high school students and had about 900 responses. So then what we did, we took some time to gather them, develop them by themes based on college, career, and community. So what we were able to do is then take those connections that are college related and give those to the proper departments throughout the Mr. Faulkner here at the middle school and Mrs. Maris at the high school, and make sure that those connections are made academically. And then as far as career, a lot of it's at the Fox Valley Career Center, a lot of it's through internships that we have in our community. And then the last one is the career, or the college career and community piece, is our local vendors. How are we connecting with them? So a year and a half ago, Dr. Fuchs and I both went to the local chambers and talked with them and said, what do you need from us? How can we get our students ready to be global thinkers, to come into a workplace and be ready, to go to college and be ready, and also go to a community and be ready? So we had a lot of diverse answers from them, and that's always changing because we hear different things based on who that connection is. If it's a landscaping company, they're looking for something. If it's a manufacturer, they're looking for something slightly different. So what we tried to do was tie all the themes in together, and those that kind of cross over all three areas, we're trying to make sure that those are our highest priority. Yes?
You've kind of touched on this several times during the board meeting. Did we get that legislative update email?
Yes.
And the law passed that it's going to allow 16-year-old and older to participate in apprenticeship programs. Is that somewhere, I know you don't have the answer for me tonight, but
right.
At some point that's going to be incorporated into this goal?
Yes, this is where it would fit, yes, and then we'd figure out how that best fits our community and our needs, but we still have to get more of the background on the law and what exactly it means.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it would. And also with the dual credit piece too, the dual credit expansion, a lot of those, as that new legislation comes in, that's part of the thing that makes this strategic plan interesting, because we have the initial 4-year plan that's in a document in an Excel spreadsheet. And it's kind of interesting to go back and look at what we thought the plan was going to look like. But then as that legislation comes up, or as dual credit comes up, and a lot of different things change, we have people like Joe Krishak working with us, and the things that we can do differently, it's expedited the plan. So it makes a change, and it's interesting to look at it as we look forward. Then the last piece on 1C, what we accomplished, is just continuing to keep a list of those connections. Just at CAC last Thursday night, we made 2 new connections there with some of the CAC members. They were like, I work in this area right here. We have an area where your students can come in and volunteer and learn more about this program. And so there were 2 of them. So as we have that running list in an Excel spreadsheet of about 60 connections that we have right now, so we're looking at ways to increase that, looking at ways for our students to go find internships, find jobs, find ways for field trips, guest speakers to come in, because again, as educators, we can tell them a lot about the theory behind it, but when we have, whether it's Career Day here or the CEO conference at Fox Valley Career Center, they can touch an actual architect, they can touch an actual landscaping design person and find out more about the nuts and bolts of those positions. So that's what we're trying to do with 1C. We're continuing to grow that, develop those connections, and make sure that when our students leave, they all have the community piece and some idea of the college and career, and then from there, they can go whichever area that best suits their needs, or that their goal is, or their drive for the future. Questions on that one before we move on to 2B? 2B, one of the things that the focus of 2B was as we're growing as a district, as we're trying to hire new employees, and then also as we're learning how to educate our students, we need different voices. We need different people. One of the things that's neat about CAC this year, we have 7 or 8 new committee members. So the feel from last Thursday night is already different than the last 3 years that I've been a part of CAC. So it's new ideas, new people being involved. So one of the goals here was to reach out to stakeholders, reach out to new stakeholders, which kind of then evolves back into the previous one where we're doing student surveys. We need to hear what they want. And part of that also was a parent survey, because kids want one thing, staff members, we have a different idea, but then also with parents, what are pieces that we might be missing from the parent piece? And so one of the other important parts of 2B is the decision-making continuum. If you recall, the decision-making continuum, which you can also find on our website, has the diagram between level 1 through level 7. We had a number of faculty members, administrators, parents, a number of people that would serve on committees, a number of people that would come in to our district, and then either a meeting would wrap up, a committee would wrap up, and then people would be ready to say, all right, I'm ready to vote, or I'm ready to hire somebody, or I'm ready to do something, but we didn't always do a strong enough job or an accurate job communicating what the goal is of the committee. It might be a brainstorming committee, it might be a decision-making committee, it might be a committee that just gathers information. So if you'll recall the decision-making continuum, the L1 to L7, that identifies what that committee's doing. It kind of drives the meeting, it can drive the agenda, and also just the work. So I'm not going to do a big review on that. There is the link here that you can look at the decision-making continuum, and you will find that all of the agendas that we have in our district, from district meetings, principal meetings, CAC, FAC, FPC, let's think TIC and TAC, AAC, OC, all of those have the levels on there, so that way when committee members come in, they know what's expected of them and they know what they're going to be doing. And then, as you guys know, the last part of one of the goals here was transparency, and the board did reaffirm two board meetings ago to continue to videotape all of our board meetings and have that information out there. So again, it's trying to inform our community and engage with our community to make sure that we're transparent in sharing all of our information. Last thing before I share, or I let Dr. Fuchs and Mrs. Eggleston come up and talk about the next two outcomes. We do, as a review, we present this every summer. Then in November, there's a consent agenda item. Then we have the February gallery walk. And then again in the spring, in May, we have another update. So I share all those updates with you, and we share them with the community. We send them out also in the GCN. Or the KCN, sorry, the KCN, that's the GCN of the modules we have to do. But we send them in the KCN so that way our community still stays involved and stays up to date on what we're doing and how we're doing. One of the things we're going to change with the gallery walk this year, if you recall the last 2 years, it was prior to a board meeting, and then we would have a bunch of wonderful teachers and staff members, support staff members present, but then all of a sudden at about 6:50 we'd have to shut it all down, we'd run down to a board meeting, and so we didn't have the reach that we wanted, we didn't have the communication that we wanted. So what we're going to do this year, we're going to combine it with, I believe it's either a choir and a band concert at the high school, or it's middle school, high school band, but it's going to be a bigger group, and I know a number of parents drop their students off. Then when they drop off their students, then they have about an hour to kill. So then that way we'll have the gallery walk set up there, probably in that cafeteria, so they can just come right over and observe it. And board members obviously would love to have you there. And then when they go back into the concert, for the second half of it, those that are leaving can come out and take a look. So hopefully we'll have a bigger crowd, because I know that our staff has done a great job putting it together. Then the community, we end up with like 20 or 30 people there. So hopefully this way we can have a bigger reach to have a bigger crowd. So that's just kind of the reporting cycle and what we'll do moving forward. And so now I'll have Mrs. Eggleston and Dr. Fuchs come up, and they'll share the next portion, or the next two outcomes. So thank you.
So the next outcome that we'll talk about begins on page 13. It's outcome 2C. Outcome 2C is really important because it acknowledges the importance of the school district in our community. And in our case, we have multiple communities. And so we call it the unifying force throughout our communities. There are 3 primary SMART goals in this section. The first one has to do with our comparable districts. At the beginning or the onset of the plan, we updated our comparable districts, and we continued to use them last year for a variety of purposes. The 9 comparable districts, or 8 plus us, include Batavia, Burlington Central, DeKalb, Geneva, Huntley, St. Charles, Sycamore, and Yorkville. We use these comparable districts for a variety of things, such as during negotiations, tax levy time, academic achievement data, a variety of different purposes. And so we're really pleased with the way that the comparable districts are stacking up in terms of our position for the various uses of that data. Additionally, we have some reach districts where we look at their information and we say, how do we get to be more like them? But they're not a part of the core comparable districts. In terms of what we're going to do throughout this upcoming year, we'll continue to use that as we move again forward into negotiations with our KEA, as well as, again, I'll prepare it for the tax levy to make sure that we're comparable for that. And then again, as we get and receive standardized test results, we can use that for academic achievement data. The second SMART goal is probably one of the most exciting SMART goals of the entire plan for some of us. So next year, about a year from now, we are planning what we are calling the Taste of Kaneland. It will be the culmination event of the plan to celebrate everything that has happened, all of the good things throughout the plan. The Taste of Kaneland will take place August 25th, 2019. It's a Sunday, and we hope to have representation from all of our schools, all of our communities, all of our organizations, and really showing the unification part of Kaneland and what it means to be a Kaneland night. We will be looking for participation on the planning committee, and throughout this upcoming year, that will be the biggest task for this outcome, is to plan that event. The third SMART goal in Outcome 2C has to do with monitoring 6 predetermined events. We selected these events in the first year of the plan. Our goal for these events was to increase participation, not only internal, but external. You'll see the list of events on page 14. For early childhood through 5th grade, it's the literacy fair combined with the kindergarten registration. Also the open houses. 6 through 8, parent-teacher conferences and the career fair. Grades 9 through 12, the parent-teacher conferences and homecoming. By monitoring the attendance at these 6 events, we are also working with our principals that each year they try something new or different in order to continue to increase participation, again, both from our parent community and community throughout the Kaneland School District. Are there any questions on Outcome 2C? All right, start thinking of good ideas then for the Taste of Kaneland. So, Fran, excuse me, I'll step aside this one.
Sure. Okay, Outcome 2D is on page 14 or 15 and 16, and the Outcome 2D is our culture, values, supports, and honors student excellence in college, career, and community readiness. So our goal in 2D was to focus on increasing recognitions of our students' achievements. So in this goal, what we were attempting to do is to determine what the baseline is, or what were we doing to recognize student achievement internally, and then we were also taking a look at how do we partner with external partners on how we increase our recognitions with our students in the outside of Kaneland. And some examples of some external recognitions might be scholarships. Another thing might be, let's say an employer has employed some of our students. They are working, let's say, at Culver's possibly, and they want to acknowledge Student of the Month. And so that's an example of a partnership that might be external. So what we tried to do is, at the very beginning, get an understanding of what we were doing internally and what we were doing externally. And then last year, what our administration and staff looked at ways that we could increase those. An example of something that popped up at our elementary is our principals were making great phone calls home to parents. So, and I'm not sure if it was necessarily one principal's idea, but all four are doing that. So that's an example of some ways that were increased this past year. Excuse me. Additionally, what we did was we looked at the ways that we were recognizing our students' achievements. We tied them then to the core values. So we looked at what we were doing, and this past year we determined internally the ways that we were recognizing student achievement were in the areas of commitment of excellence and citizenship. When we looked at how we were partnering with our external stakeholders, we were focused on commitment of excellence. So we were able to establish a baseline and then continue to look at ways we can increase those. We were very fortunate and successful. Internally, we increased our student recognitions internally by 25%, and then externally, and it probably had to do with we may not have captured the amount of ways that we were recognizing student achievement with our external stakeholders, but that increased by 233%. So we found that we were very successful in that area. So that's what we accomplished this past year. Now next year, what we're going to be doing is while we attached and matched the core values to the ways that we were recognizing our students, we're looking at what are the core values that are underrepresented. So we're going to take a look at those and then be a little bit more intentional about ways that we might be able to increase our internal and our external student recognitions. So that's our plan for this year. And then what I also wanted to mention, even when Dr. Mumm was talking a little bit about student recognitions, she was talking specifically about the systems in place, and Dr. Layden was also talking about community connections as well. And so you can kind of see how these are intertwined. So Dr. Layden talked about community connections. We're talking about ways we can partner with external stakeholders as well. So it's very intertwined, and we look forward to seeing how we can increase our internal and external stakeholders in the areas that are underrepresented this school year. Any questions?
Sounds good.
Are there ways that you could ensure that you're increasing recognitions that are still meaningful, right, as opposed to just blanketly increasing recognitions, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
ensure that there's still meaningful recognitions, right?
So the way I define the meaningful, and maybe you can offer your insight to that, meaningful would be that they're tied to our core values.
Sure. Okay.
And so that's how, if they're not tied to that, not to say that they wouldn't be meaningful, but they wouldn't be meaningful in what we're looking for here. Does that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
As long as you have something, right? Like, I think if
Absolutely.
you're just increasing everything, then
Yeah.
nothing's being increased, right?
And obviously, the ways that we look for those meaningful, looking at student recognition and those partnering has to do with what's appropriate for the age of the students
Sure.
as well.
Right. Good.
I just kind of echo what you were saying. I wouldn't want to see participation trophies handed out.
Right.
To meet the goal of increasing participation by 10%, You know, I'm not a big believer in every kid at the
Yeah.
soccer game gets a trophy. So if it's a meaningful.
Well, I think this year's going to be very helpful because we know the underrepresented core values. It is our focus then going to be in those areas. So yes, you're right. We do acknowledge students that are participating in things, so we wouldn't disregard that. But if we have we're recognizing a lot of students for participation, then we probably might need to focus on some other core values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
So I just want to mention at the last strategic plan, and Dr. Mum, I think, mentioned it earlier, core values, they were there in the plan, but it certainly wasn't as intentional as it is in this plan. So I'm glad to hear tonight the way that we're tying things to the core values, because that makes them very meaningful. So with that being said, we're going to move on to outcome 3, and Mr. Atkins.
All right, thank you, and we're in the home stretch here. I wanted to start by just recognizing and pointing out the strategic and overlapping work of the strategic plan done by everyone in the district and how all these things are coalescing together. It really is neat to see a very thoughtful, purposeful document that kind of guides everything that we do here. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about the third outcome in our plan for human resources. The first goal is about hiring the right people. And so as we worked through that, as the board knows, last year we spent a lot of time developing a candidate profile, talking to not only staff and community members, but students as well at all levels, and kind of compiling all of that into one document. We are now looking forward this coming year to utilizing that document to revise our hiring practices, where our staff has done a great job of hiring new teachers over the years, hiring new support staff over the years. But what we're doing now is we're infusing that process with the candidate profile. We're going to talk a little bit about how we do that across the district so that we have some consistency at all levels and all areas, so that the candidate profile now drives some of the questioning that we do, some of the things that we look at. We're also going to talk a little bit about that final culminating process, part of the process where we'd want to see some sort of evidence of a candidate's work as a teacher, whether that be an actual lesson or video lesson from their EdTPA work, which is part of their certification process. We have a subcommittee of staff from the elementary, middle, and high school administrators that are helping refine this process, and we'll be spending the fall talking about that with the ad team and making sure that we all understand how the candidate profile connects to that hiring process, and that way, as we continue to navigate the staffing waters that come to this district, if I hire someone at my building, we can all rest assured that there will be a certain baseline understanding of what they can and can't do, the attributes they have, so that if in the coming years they're reassigned to your building or to this other building over here, that there's some Kaneland consistency to that hiring process. So we're excited about that. We've been taking a look at exit interview data. We do have a Google survey that goes out to those that are leaving the district. We also then have a follow-up face-to-face interview process if someone leaving the district would like to take advantage of that. Not everybody does. To date, we've only had 10 respondents to the Google survey. But it asks a variety of questions about their satisfaction with the district, suggestions for improvement, their reason for leaving, specifically if finances were a reason in their leaving. As we've gotten that data back, overall, of the 10 respondents, 9 were very happy with the district, had some maybe suggestions for staff development or advancement opportunities, that kind of thing. But we did have one respondent that was not happy with the district. And then in terms of the financial component to why someone might leave, of the 10 respondents, 8 said money was not a factor in their leaving. Maybe a spouse got transferred or closer to home, those kinds of things. 1 said it was a factor, but it wasn't the deciding factor. And 1 said, yes, it was absolutely a factor. So just some data that we can get. We did have 5 people come forward for a face-to-face interview, shared some more detailed information about their experiences, and then as appropriate, we share that feedback to the administration that are connected to that person for their own growth and thoughts and reflections. But overall, that feedback has been very positive and very supportive. Lots of comments about being very appreciative to what Kaneland has done for those people and the opportunities they've had to develop their skills and advance in their craft. So questions on that part? Yes.
Chris, just what's the sample size you're looking at? So you said 5 interviews, 10 surveys. Is that 15
Right.
or is that
I
overlapping?
can give you a little bit of a comparative.
Okay.
The sample size for teaching staff, we had to hire 22 staff this year, 10 due to resignations. So for teaching staff, that was 10. For speak staff, we had to hire 10 new employees this year. So I can tell you that that's not quite representative of the people that have left. We've had maybe, I'd say less than 4 or 5 leave from speak. Administratively, we had 1 person leave who was one of our face-to-face respondents. Excuse me, we had 2 leave, and 1 was one of our face-to-face respondents. And then our non-certified staff, we had another 5 or so people that resigned. So I don't know that it's representative of the whole,
Right.
but 10 respondents on the Google survey, we're probably talking, I don't know, 30 people that have left the district for various reasons. So a quarter to a third respondents.
Okay.
So, other questions? No? Some additional information about that. We're just kind of tracking over last year and this year who's left and what's kind of gone on. For KEA, last year we hired 24 new teachers, 7 due to resignations. 5 left of those resignations left for unknown reasons. They didn't do a survey. They didn't really talk to their colleagues. They just moved on. And then of the 24 that we hired, 8 people had master's degrees. Most of those new hires were at the high school level. This year, right now, we've hired 22 new teachers. 10 were due to resignations. The remaining 12 were additions, 4th grade and 1st grade, early childhood, that kind of thing. The behavior analyst and the vision itinerant who are contracted employees for special ed. But of the 10 resignations that we did have this year, 5 left again for unknown reasons. And then the remainder, spouse was transferred closer to home, those kinds of things, part-time to full-time. But again, of the 22 teachers, 8 have master's degrees as we've been onboarding them, and there's been an equal distribution across elementary, high school, and middle school. We started this summer. Most of our new hires were at 1 elementary building. By the time the summer finished, we had, again, an equal distribution of new hires across all 3 levels. So, our second goal was to look at the professional development side of it. How do we bring people in? How do we keep people on the cutting edge of their craft? We've been working with the candidate profile as we've looked for new people. We went to the job fair at NIU this year. At that time, we only had 1 opening that the district was aware of. They run the job fair in February, which is a little early. But we talked to 3 different candidates for that 1 position. We ended up hiring 1 of them here at the high school. So that was good, and we're going to be working on trying to get a sense of some of that earlier in the year with retirees and things that we're anticipating, and then also expanding the participation in that out to other ad team members as they now are working with that candidate profile in the revised hiring process. We've been working with NIU department liaisons with the PDS program, which is the year-long student co-teaching project, as well as the traditional student teaching experiences that we have, just to try to streamline some of the back end of things, as well as make sure that as they're coming in, they're hearing about that candidate profile, and those are all things that will be coming in the future year. With our mentoring program, we've made a couple of minor tweaks to the process. We moved 1 of the 3 days that start the year back a little bit into the end of July. So we bring teachers in at the end of July, go over the big district umbrella stuff, the Kaneland 2020 plan, the evaluation process, how we do RTI in our district, because we did get feedback that was too much right before school. And then the week before school starts, there's 2 days in the building. The administration works with their new teachers and their colleagues, going over classroom management and whatever curricular components they have at their level. And then half of their time on those last 2 days are also in their classroom preparing. So they feel that they're ready to go. We have a variety of layers of support at the different levels, department chairs at the high school, team leaders at the middle school, and then the elementary has a position for building mentor, just someone in the building that can go and share everything from where do I find the pink copy paper to who's this instructional coach they keep talking about. I want to highlight real quick, if I can, the role of the instructional coaches in working with our new teachers. We have one significant change this year in that our new hires need to complete a coaching cycle with all of our instructional coaches. The feedback that we've continued to get from all staff about our coaches is that they are seeing new elements to their craft. They're seeing new engagement in what they are doing, how they are doing it, why they're doing it. It's really exciting. The coaches put together a short video for our new teachers to view on that first day in July with me, where they can kind of get a flavor for what it is. And the video is very simple. It's just existing teachers holding up little cue cards that say things like, my coach helped me too, blah, blah, blah. With my coach, I, blah, blah, blah. And I was profoundly struck at the people that were in that video. Teachers from all lengths of service, teachers from every department, every grade level, you name it. It was really cool to see all these people in there saying, I tried problem-based learning, I tried this, I tried that. That is what the instructional coaches are there for, and it's very, very exciting to see. Kind of connecting to that too, I also want to praise those people in our district that are the igniters when we talk about retaining staff. So we've got people here, they've been here for however long, like anything, you kind of get into a groove, and that's a good thing, but it also has its negative side. This construct that we're working on with personalized learning is reinvigorating our staff. The igniters are exciting people. They're igniting the passion again for a lot of our staff, and it's just really cool to see how all these things circle around one another. So in the coming year, we'll be looking at that mentoring process again, making sure that fits with what we're doing. Making sure that we continue to work with our local universities so that they understand what it is that Kaneland's looking for. It was nice when we went to the job fair to talk to teachers and share that candidate profile so they could see what we were looking for, but then also to say to them, these are also things that you might hear about, talk about, and want to showcase in yourself with other districts, not just ours. So a lot of neat things going on, and we'll be looking forward to continuing to get great people coming into our district. So questions for me?
One of you. We had talked a couple meetings ago about the hiring process of the transportation director, and I see that one of the goals under 3A is to implement revised hiring practices, blah, 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 blah. Can I assume those two are tied together and will be resolved?
Yes, we have that completed. That's something I'll share with the board.
Okay.
We have that done.
One of the progressive pieces is we're kind of starting with that teaching core, and then from there we'll be branching out. Likewise with the Speak evaluation tool, we worked with our Speak colleagues on that. We have a really nice process for that, and then in the coming year we'll be expanding that up to all of our non-Speak educational support personnel, IT, maintenance, all those kinds of things. So not only the hiring, but also the feedback that we give people. We're trying to start with that teaching core and then branch out from there.
Okay, thank you.
What will happen in the coaching cycle that you said that all the new teachers have to go through?
It's dependent on their needs. So a coaching cycle isn't a specific thing that they do. There's a whole variety of things that could occur. It could be that the coach comes in and observes the teacher with kind of that pre-conference, post-conference debrief. It could be that the instructional coach comes in and models a lesson for the teacher. Hey, I'm really trying to figure out how to teach fractions to my fourth graders. Got any ideas? Here, let me model this number talk concept for you. This is really a neat way to break it down simply and have the kids more engaged. It could be a co-teaching construct, but all of it comes with reflective conversation. So it's when we talk about instructional coaching, there's a cognitive coaching construct that underpins all the things that the coaches do. So it's not just, how'd that go? Great, good, moving on. It's, well, why did you choose that activity? I noticed you did this. Was that effective for Marcus and Jane and Billy? How do you know? What do you do with it next time? And there's a very deep metacognitive process that comes with that relationship. And so it's going to depend on the learner, the teacher, but the coach is there to work through it with them and find a process or a protocol that matches their need.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Just to close this off, just as a reminder, November, there'll be the next update in the consent agenda, February, the gallery walk, and then in May. But one of the things I wanted to share, that the HR department is a result of, or this actual position is a result of the strategic plan. When we sat down with the planning committee, then did our initial work of surveys of students, surveys of staff, and surveys of parents, what are we looking for? And while Dr. Mumm and a number of people that she worked with in the high school directors of ed services over the years balanced the HR role and the curriculum role, part of the feedback that we had from them and their role and from our staff was, while they're doing an awesome job trying to juggle both, can you imagine how much more they could do digging deeper into one topic and then letting HR do that role. So one of the results of this strategic plan was an HR director of HR, and so Chris is the result of the role, and Chris here in Kaneland is a result of that. So we're happy to have Chris, obviously, and all of our cabinet members and support staff members and KEA members that helped create the plan. And then just the last thing, one of the things when the planning committee met, they hoped and said two things. Number one, we hope it's a plan that is has a cycle or a circular figure to it, that it is all interrelated. And then secondly, one that is actually living and breathing that we use. And so if you've heard a number of times, Fran would reference something that I had said. I would reference something that Dr. Mumm had said, or Julianne of Dr. Fuchs. So I think it truly is a plan that envelops and is cyclical in nature. And the three things that hopefully you learned and heard over and over again were the learner profile, the graduate profile, and the candidate profile. Those are the three major products of each of the three priorities that we have. So as you hear those, you can't help but have those three being interrelated. You can't have a candidate profile to hire the right people to use a learner profile, thus to drive our students to meet the graduate profile. So all of those things are completely interdependent and related, and so that's been a neat part of this process, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward, and you'll see those updates and throughout any of the time board members or staff members or community members, if there's questions, please feel free to contact us, and we're happy to provide those updates. And any questions before we close that? No? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Cabinet members and KEA.
You're up. Superintendent report.
Yeah. Completely unrelated topics, thankfully. First, no school on Monday. We do have a 3-day weekend, a holiday weekend. Second, foundation. The foundation from the last board meeting to this meeting did meet, and Mrs. President Sparber was our board member that attended, so I'll let you share any of the highlights and see if anything you want to share the update from that meeting.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, the main point we talked about earlier, which was the $10,000 plus the grants, which was fantastic. But that group is great. They keep just really thinking of new ideas to, you know, other fundraising ideas really, and they have just a committed core, which is great to see. So I'm excited what new ideas we'll see this year, because I'm sure we'll see some more. So, and then the golf outing, which you mentioned.
And the grant recipients will be here in November. The first board meeting in November, we invited them, try to have enough time so that they can, whatever their grant that they received, that they can start to institute it, get it started for the first couple months, and they'll come in November, and we'll recognize them. Hopefully Cheryl will be able to, or Mrs. Crosby, Cheryl Crosby, the foundation president, will also be able to attend and share some of the highlights from the foundation also. The next thing we had, CAC. CAC met last Thursday, and unfortunately, Mr. Rivas couldn't be here tonight, but he was our board member who was there. And our initial CAC agenda item, the lengthiest item, again, is Kaneland 2020. We shared it with our CAC members, tried to get some feedback from them on that topic, and we also got the opening day feedback, first couple days of school, what kind of things are they seeing, what have they, sons and daughters, students have experienced, any feedback that we can have. And also, just had the CAC members look at the agenda for the year, topics throughout the next 7 months, anything that we should adjust or change. And so we got some good feedback, and now we're putting together the agenda for the rest of the year for CAC. And the last thing that I wanted to share, for about the second or third year now in a row, we've received recognition from the Association of School Business Officials International. It could have been a salute, but since Dr. Fuchs in the business office is doing such a good job of it, she'd be ripping through a lot of our salutes. So we'll just received a salute, I think, last year or the year before. But again, what the Association of School Business Officials International, kind of from the mission is to recognize districts that have met the program's high standards for financial reporting and accountability. The school district earned a certificate of excellence for its comprehensive annual financial report for this fiscal year ending 2017. And then it also just goes on to mention the mission is to promote and recognize financial reporting specifically through a district's CAFR, which is the CAFR that we've done for 2 or 3 years now?
We're on our third year.
Third year, okay. And then they just close with, the CAFR informs parents and stakeholders about the financial and economic state of the district, making it an important communications tool for building trust and engaging with the school community. So congratulations again. Dr. Fuchs, thanks for your dedicated work on that, and everybody in the business office, and we'll make sure we share that tomorrow morning when we meet with them. So.
I think that's important, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have 4 updates. Yes. So we had our first joint parent leadership meeting tonight. So if you'll recall, 2 to 3 times a year, we meet with the leadership from the PTOs and the booster organization. When I say we, it's the administration. So we have representation from the buildings, the educational services department, and the special ed department. And we all meet with the PTO presidents, and we go through a variety of topics. It's a forum that allows the administration to share with them, as well as for them to share with one another, build on their programs, piggyback. But I think Dr. Layden and I would both agree, one of the things that we always are amazed by is how hard they work and how much money they raise for our students. So at our September meeting, we'll have an opportunity to look at those donations and accept them. But the meeting tonight, again, was very productive. So, Ryan, did you have a question? No. No? Okay. The second thing is the high school gym floor. The work on it is continuing. We're hopeful that they'll be back on Wednesday to start working on the staining. At this point, we believe we're still on schedule for September 30th. We're curious to see if the bleacher installation will go as planned once they finish. So it is a very tight timeline, but we are continuing to move forward. The third thing, I did receive the check for the trailer from the donation from the anonymous donor, so we have the money in hand, and the trailer has been ordered. That again is for the Kaneland High School band, and so it's supposed to be in September 26th. So hopefully that will also go as planned. I'll keep you informed. Lastly, Mr. Payton and I, Mr. Faulkner and Ms. Weiss from the middle school had an initial meeting to discuss with the KYFL, the Kaneland Youth Football League, regarding the possibility of a donation from them regarding a press box here at Harder. And so for the football field, we could use it or share it. It would be ours for track and field, and they would use it on Saturdays for football. It would contain a sound system and have 2 levels. The bottom level would be used for storage of their equipment. The top level would then be used to make announcements on the sound system. Our architects are working with them because any kind of structure like this would require a permit, and so I'll keep you posted. Again, it was an initial exploration meeting. We will discuss this through our capital planning process once we get an estimate so that we know what we're dealing with regard to the ability to fund it.
What
So.
age does the league go through?
You know what, they go through 8th grade because, remember, we don't have the football anymore, but I believe that they've started younger now because he talked a little bit about having some flag football programs. So I'm thinking somewhere between 3rd and 4th, I would have to check to be sure.
So the league that takes the students from the junior high, so we can't have a football team, wants to donate to our football program?
Not to,
Well,
to the track and
facility?
field, yeah, to the facility.
Seems odd to me.
I don't think you're alone.
Okay.
Those are the kids that are out there playing tonight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Up until this year, well, they used to practice at Harder, and then when they started building the Sugar Grove Park, we moved them to the high school, and now that we have lacrosse up at the high school, we moved them back down here. So they've been at different locations throughout their time. It's a relatively new league. I would say maybe 8 to 10 years old. Yeah. That's all I have for tonight, Dr. Layden. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I just briefly will share that, as you all know, obviously, but Mr. LePayton did resign as a board member effective August 17th, and so that we are currently taking applications for any interested board member candidates, and those applications are through Friday. This Friday is the 31st, so if there is anybody who is interested, they can contact the district office, and we can get them the information leading up to this Friday. So, public service announcement to fill that role.
There we go.
So,
Awesome.
that was all I had. Thank you.
Okay. And any topics for consideration?
I have a couple. I don't know if it's completely a topic or a thought, but we get that legislative update. And I know you guys get it, and I know you deal with it, but like, there's the one about the apprenticeship programs. I guess I'd like, not necessarily discuss it, but to hear how the district, puts that law into practice. So, and I know that you got it today, so you're not gonna do anything for 6 months or a year, whatever the process time is. But I'd like to see those two pieces of information tied together more.
Okay.
So, I don't think that that's per se a topic, but.
Well, I think what we can do is, part of that and part of some of the other things that we learn in those, some of those are just laws that we just go and do and have to institute, but something like that is something that would go through Kaneland 2020 for sure, and through the curriculum, through a curriculum piece. So those would be things, as they impact us that way, I'll just make sure I'm mindful that we keep them on the front burner so that when it is instituted, we make sure that the board sees and hears, especially when it's something that's been brought up of interest.
Yeah, like there was the one about the lunch, there's a 500, which is going to affect the district, but I guess sometimes I'd like to see that legislative piece is tied to whatever actions were.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other idea or thought is that I don't want to review all of the contracts that you issue, but did we ever think about putting a delay penalty into some of these contracts that is very common in the construction industry? So I don't want to go through each contract. That isn't my intention at all, but maybe a general review of what we hope to accomplish through it. Am I making any sense at all?
I believe so. Do you only want it on the construction ones, so like in the spring, or what?
Most of the I can't say that, I haven't read them.
Our attorney typically will review them?
Yes, but that
Okay.
doesn't necessarily mean that they include things that the board feels is important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely legally sound, but
Sure.
if I had thought of this back when we issued this contract, I would have made sure that there was a delay penalty in it so that we didn't run into this problem. So it's not necessarily, again, a review of all of the legalese that are in the contracts, but just, again, it's kind of an idea more than a topic of discussion. That was it.
Thank you. Noted them both.
Yep. Anything else? Nope. All right, so then this is the second opportunity for public comment. Any public comment? Nope. All right, seeing none. We do have executive session tonight. The Board of Education is scheduled for an executive session where there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into executive session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. And tonight we'll be going into executive session for the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in this act, including a vacancy in a public office when the public body is given proper power. It's given power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office when the public body is given power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance. There you have it. So I would like a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mrs. Barber?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
That look earlier was, why wasn't my wife at